So greetings one and all. We're on the second episode of Rasta Doc-Trine with Tekle Selassie and Alpha D. Tekle Selassie, greetings, my brother.
Give thanks and I send to the King of Kings, Garmawik and Haile Selassie I. Give thanks for the kind opportunity, brother.
Yes, I. So greetings one and all in the holy name of His Imperial Majesty, Kadamawi Haile Selassie I, conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, elect of God, defender of the faith, Negus Negast. It's in His holy name today we come to talk about the theme of education. Let me start this show with 3 quotes from His Imperial Majesty. Firstly, he said, "Education and the quest for knowledge stop only at the grave." He also said, "The person who claims to know everything, as the scriptures say, is like sounding brass and tinkling cymbal." And finally, "A man who says, 'I have learned enough and will learn no further,' should be considered as knowing nothing at all." Serving as Minister of Education during many years, and as Emperor, he had a personal attachment to the development of the education system in Ethiopia because during his rule, Ethiopia's population was in a majority illiterate, and the school was a privilege reserved to the elites. So Haile Selassie took much pride in the establishment of the Haile Selassie University and the Tefara Makonnen School and many other schools and training centers that followed. Education was very important to Haile Selassie. To be talking about this theme, we will be based on the selected speeches of His Imperial Majesty. This book starts with the part on education. That's why we chose to talk about education before talking of anything else, because it's the first theme that His Majesty talks about. Tekle, can you introduce the people to what is this book, the selected speeches, and to the different levels of interpretation?
When this book has been compiled by the Ministry of Education of the Imperial Government in 1967, should be the first publishing of it, the first issue, and it gathers many speeches of His Majesty that are divided for different topics and subjects. And this is an official translation from Amharic to English, so it is not just a translation, but a translation approved by His Majesty. And it's very, it is the ideal reading for the people outside Ethiopia, for His Majesty intended to speak in English, communicating specific things for the people abroad. So we find even the differences between the Amharic version and the English version. So this book was distributed by the Ethiopian Airlines as a reading for the journey to travel safe through the airlines of the Emperor. And it's very interesting the fact that at the beginning of the original book, you find a formula of so-called copyleft. His Majesty say any portion of this book could be reproduced by any process without permission. So that is also, the we can say the discovery of a new conception of copyright.
Amazing. And so just to introduce the people, you told me once there are 8 levels of interpretation. Just to explain the way we read it.
The speeches of His Majesty should be conceived within a spiritual perspective, like new chapters of the Bible. like a new teaching of Christ about the earthly things and about the foundations of the government and the kingdoms according to the royal ministry of Christ. So these new chapters should be conceived at the same level of the old chapters of books of the Word of God. And we know by tradition, by Ethiopian tradition, that there are different plans of interpretation. Basically, there are three levels. The literal level, that is the historical meaning of what is told in the literal meaning of the scripture. Then we have the moral, and then we have the spiritual or allegoric or symbolic. And if you go in depth, we find also that these three are the general points of the interpretational system, but we have also other middle points. If we interpret it like a 7-symbol scale, like a set, like the seals of the book we find in the Revelation. It is written that Christ opened the book, and this book is sealed with 7 seals. The 7 seals are also the chakra and the seals of the body the Hindu people is speaking about. And of course, these 7 seals are several levels of interpretation of the scripture. And there is also an 8th one, that is the mystical, that is the one that unify all the previous 7. We could speak in detail about that, but the most important thing is to understand that the word of His Majesty should not be conceived only like a political manual, but being the word of God, it got several levels of interpretation, and many of them they live at an allegorical level that is not the historical context seen. So we should take the truth of the historical content and also the spiritual meaning that is higher. So that's why it is a very, very deep book, and should not be conceived just like a manual of political matters, for the one speaking is always God.
But even for those minds who are listening to us, who are more interested in the historical and down to earth levels, I will always be bringing back the conversation to also the political and aspect of it. So that's what's interesting between Tekle and me in this conversation. Yeah, man.
We should work for the equal attainment of both, His Majesty say. So it's like another duality. There's the literal and there is the symbolic. We should keep the balance between the two, of course.
Between the spiritual and the material.
Yes.
When we talked about this, you were saying how about the number 1, and that all education comes from the oneness of God. And that also Kadamawi, Haile Selassie Kadamawi is the first, and it's also the first word of the Bible. So all education and all knowledge comes from the one. All right, so we're on page 1, part 1, and there's the foundation stone. Because Haile Selassie gave his own personal palace to the creation of a university. We read, we have dedicated our home, which we received from our noble father, to their service as a free gift to the nation, in the hope that we thus contribute to the opportunity for them to prepare for fruitful careers. So, yes, His Majesty gave his own home to the creation of the university.
Yes, and that is a very important example for the politician that got the responsibility to lead the people. That is an example how to perform these duties in a way that is worth of it. And politicians should be the leader of the people, should be the one who gives his own good and his own wealth for the benefit of the people.
Mm-hmm. And you also had the interpretation about, seeing Haile Selassie as the Christ, if he gave his home. So, God's home is in the university, because Haile Selassie speaks very highly of universities. For example, he says, from the universities must come men, ideas, knowledge, experience, technical skills, and the deep humane understanding vital to fruitful relations among nations. So from the universities, a lot of things must happen, yeah?
The main sense of this thing is the fact that His Majesty is speaking now at a kind of translation of the spiritual principles that we find in the teaching of Christ in His first coming, in His first spiritual and priestical coming. So the translation of the concept of the principle taught by Christ about the primacy of the word and the primacy of the spiritual kingdom and the invisible things.
Similarly, the foundation of any movement of our body is to be found in an invisible act of our spiritual will.
We find the same principle now in the system of the state. And of course, the university system, the educational system represents the spiritual essence in a kingdom, in a state. So the priority of the spirituality and the priority and the supremacy of the mind over the matter is expressed also in these, that the educational system and the academic system and the knowledge kept by the academic system should be the spiritual foundation of the state. And that is very, very important in terms of political doctrine, because we find example in the world. We can quote Italy, where the constitution itself says that we are founded on work, that Italy is a republic that is founded upon work. This is the first article of their constitution. But we can find here an analytic mistake, because work is not an activity of principle, it's an activity of fulfillment. And if you don't know how to work, you are not trained in your work, you cannot do anything. So the first job of the child is go to school. So that is really a very important inner logic in the affairs of the state.
And also how we see in today's societies how university is becoming commercialized, and in the end it's people, how big companies are paying people to make research for not for the advancement of knowledge or science, but for the advancement of capitalism.
In fact, we can find even these in the speeches of His Majesty. His Majesty say, in that same speeches you quoted before, speaking unto the people of the University of Addis Ababa, and saying, university is a spiritual enterprise. University is not created to make money. Instead, in the West, we have many academic institutions that reason according to capital profits and to financial criteria, and that is not good, because the orientation of the university should be spiritual.
He was also saying that the point of education is not only to have a good salary at some point. But he goes even further. His Imperial Majesty says, the salvation of our country, Ethiopia. So the fact that he's talking of the salvation is particularly important, being the negus negast the defender of a faith, you know? So whether we believe it or not, he's still speaking on a religious authority. The salvation of our country, Ethiopia, as we have repeatedly stated to you, lies primarily in education. As Ethiopia is one, all Ethiopians are also one, and education is the only way to maintain this condition.
Again, here we find the connection between education and one. Every time we say foundation, education, the final is always one. They say on. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, that is the basis of the world reality, the rightful foundation and the rightful starting point, the one starting point. It is important to respect the logic, the natural logic when we produce, when we work.
As Ethiopians being one, we want to continue being one through education. So education is not something to divide. Actually, education in Selassie's perspective is crucial to teaching people to live together and work together. He even says, it is education which allows people to live together and makes them avoid the pitfalls of immorality and induces respect for the law. Yes.
Yeah, for education, again, symbolically is the word. So you see the word is the mean of communication and connection of the peoples. It is the element, the eternal factor, is Majesty say also, you know, and the spiritual factor. And therefore it is the foundational one also.
He even says further, just to satisfy my people current questions. Universities stand today as the most promising hope for constructive solutions to the problems that beset the modern world. So it's in universities, you know, that we have to find constructive solutions.
Of course. It is the source of the real revolution, the source of the political revolution we are seeking for. It is not only the basis for any kingdom and any rightful kingdom, it is also the basis of the new kingdom we should set for this earth, you know, in the name of His Majesty. So we must use education to set the foundation of the change also of society.
And His Majesty encouraged governments to invest in education and in the educational system, saying education is costly and higher education is the most costly of all, but it's also an investment, a very profitable investment.
It is the best way. It is the best way to give benefit to the world community and to create growth, spiritual and material growth.
He even, just to make a link with our past episode on democracy, he even explains how, you know, education is a necessary condition for a functional democracy. So he says, quote, "A well-informed public opinion is essential to the growth of political and social awareness. Only who is informed can comment on his nation's development, and only by such comments can errors be corrected and progress stimulated." So he was encouraging the whole nation to be educated, and not only children, because he also explained how education is also for adults. And he created a night school and a library and different courses in America for the adults and for the people of Ethiopia, not just the youth.
No. In fact, His Majesty also says that the good age to receive lessons in life is from 7 years old to 50 years old. This is, in the words of His Majesty, the schooling age of man. And of course, wisdom is better than silver and gold. So that is the most profitable thing, and it is the source of any wealth. Education also is the key for freedom. In fact, it is written that truth makes the people free. And that's why also for the democratic participation of the people, education is very necessary. And His Majesty used the students at the university within the national service program to fight illiteracy in the countryside of Ethiopia, and also to teach the people of the countryside about the rights and the duties of the democratic system His Majesty was bringing about.
What I'm feeling here is just that, education is not just Facebook news feed and YouTube videos.
For sure.
Going to educate oneself in the university to understand things in a more complex manner, that's the kind of understanding that's essential for the functioning of a democracy. And as you were saying, one who thinks he knows it all, it's like as if he knows nothing.
True.
Education makes leaders, makes leadership.
Yes, even Marcus Garvey said that the power of word of man and the reasoning power of man gives him a natural superiority to lead the people. So the primacy of education is also about the leadership that the educational power gives to the individual, for knowledge is power. This is a sentence from His Majesty and from Marcus Garvey both. The university system of a state has also the responsibility to mold and to shape the leading class of a state, and a leading class of the state, of a government, should be a very educated one, not like we see around, that very, very poor educated people are allowed to lead the destinies of the people, while the state and the kingdom should be an affair of science.
Like today with Trump, President Trump, who can hardly be said to be an intellectual, and he's governing United States.
Only him, there are many, but yeah, it is a good type.
Yeah. Selassie I says something interesting about how the leader trains himself out of any inordinate fear of making mistakes. So, as if it's out of the fear of making mistakes, the leader will continue searching and educating himself to be sure of what he's saying. And so that's very important for I and I in today in activism, in militancy, to be able to defend important points of views. For example, against fossil fuels, or against colonization, or against corruption. One has to have all the information necessary to not falter during the argumentation and the conversation. One interesting quote, because even though Haile Selassie was defender of the Christian Orthodox Ethiopian faith, his education system was non-religious, right?
True.
So
yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
First, I would like to say one thing regarding the inordinate fear. When we speak about spirituality, we speak about faith. That is also the rocky foundation that make the wall building well planted and well rooted, and it makes hard to shake it. So knowledge should aim to give this power of tranquility and solidity to the people. When we speak in Ge'ez, we call the faith Haymanot. Amin is also the surety. Haymanot means also surety, means sense of truth. So the leader must be the one educated that through knowledge can reach a nice level of consciousness, and he gains also the absolute calm, as His Majesty says about an absolute inner calm. It is a specific quality of the doctor and the physician when he operates to be very firm with his own hands in order to be able to operate rightly. So that is also a basic feature of the leaders. And also, we can talk about the non-religious, the laic character of the state of His Majesty that is different from the Western conception, because we have a state with an official church. So it doesn't mean that the state is ignoring the faith or is without spiritual connection with the faith. He's saying that he respects all the faiths, all the creeds inside the kingdom, and that it doesn't interfere with the spiritual affairs. As we know that heaven and earth, they are one in dignity, but they have different spaces and different plans of operation.
There's something belonging to God and something belonging to Caesar.
And so we could find in the school of His Majesty just a moral education lesson.
Morality class.
Yeah, morality class where all the sacred texts were used, both Muslim and Christian, and also Hindu, and there was just an explanation about the universal spirituality, the moral importance of the universal spirituality. There was no theological teaching or religious teaching, because Ethiopia was rich of schools, of spiritual schools for each faith. So the Muslim had his own spiritual school, and the Christian the same. And it was not necessary to put this kind of teaching within the like system of the national education. So that is a very high and progressive outlook.
Even though it was like, we will come back to how knowledge of God is fundamental for Haile Selassie as concept of knowledge. I just want to talk a second about the preservation of Ethiopian culture and traditions. Here I read, Ethiopia is a country with her own cultures and more. These, our cultures and customs, more than being the legacy of our historical past, are characteristics of our Ethiopianness. We do not want our legacies and traditions to be lost. Our wish and desire is that education develop, enrich, and modify them. Just to bring back this concern for preserving the ancestral heritage, Ethiopian cultural heritage, while bringing Ethiopia into the modern world. This is the subtle, special intention of His Majesty's educational system.
To introduce the modern way of thinking in the modern age, because if His Majesty is Christ and is coming in the coming of His kingdom, therefore there's a new age, a new epoch, and His Majesty speaks about this also. He speaks clearly about the fact that a new time, a new epoch of the history of Ethiopia is opening now. The spiritual foundation for the understanding of this new time, a new system, is education. For education is the translation of the concept of preaching that we can find in the ancient Christian tradition and still, in the spiritual institutions of Ethiopia. But now, the language of preaching is translated in the reality of the kingdom as education.
While preaching deals with ancient spiritual wisdom, education is dealing now with modern physical science and historical method.
Yeah, on the spiritual side of education and knowledge, His Majesty says, nor can we ignore the importance of the spiritual in this academic life. Learning and technical training must be nurtured by faith in God, reverence for the human soul, and respect for the reasoning mind.
Exactly.
There is no safer anchorage for learning, our lives, and our public actions than that provided by divine teachings coupled with the best in human understanding.
Yes, when His Majesty spoke about these matters, as you quote, he said, I don't want my tradition to be lost. And he conceives, this new time, these new chapters is adding to our wealth, our heritage, as a progress in perfect continuity, without fractures, without breakings. And this perfect continuity from the ancient to the new, from the past to the present and the future, it is the example also of a well-planted tree and powerful tree. The roots give lymph, give power and food to the whole structure. Then it produces a fruit in perfect continuity of the line, of the root, of the trunk, of the branch. And the same is for an house. When we have to build an house, we have to start with foundation, then floor after floor we get the roof and we fulfill it, but it will be very, very strong and firm when there's a continuity between all its parts. So His Majesty is giving us a new interpretation, a new vision, a new reality, a new knowledge, but this knowledge is given now. It is just a development of the teachings of Christ that Christ gave, the eternal teachings Christ gave us Most High Priest, and now is given in continuity with that heritage, is given new teachings about the kingdom reality of Christ over the earth and the truth about the fleshical side. That is the other side, the Omega side. So, there's a continuity between old and new, as there's a continuity and a unity between Alpha and Omega.
And this new science His Majesty is given through educational modern system. It didn't come to replace or to contradict ancient religious wisdom, but to complete and to fulfill it, as it is written in the Gospel that Christ didn't come to abolish the law of Moses, but to fulfill and complete it.
People could wonder, okay, guys, fine, but how is all this relevant to today's challenges? And His Majesty explains that knowledge of man's kinship to God, the sincere belief of man's kinship to God must be the foundation for all man's efforts for enlightenment and learning, the basis for all understanding, cooperation, and peace. He says this because we are in crucial times when nations rise against nations and tensions increase and disaster is possible at any moment. So in these times, where spiritual values are, there's confusion, let's say, in concepts. What I like about His Majesty's words is that it's open to anybody. From any religion you are, you can understand what he's talking about. But it's, the sincere belief in man's kinship to God must be the foundation for all man's efforts for enlightenment and learning, the basis for all understanding, cooperation, and peace. So I think that's a very important point.
It's quoting the speech of Christ taken from the Gospel about the second coming of Christ. And Christ said, in that time you shall see nations shall rise against nations. So His Majesty is quoting this specific crucial time, theologically speaking, of the second coming of Christ. St. John, in one of his letters, say, when Christ comes, we see him, for it is written also in Revelation that every eye shall see. So we see God in pictures. And we shall see him, and we shall be like him. This is also the foundation of the idea of I and I. So it's declaring now that this is the time of the I and I. And in I and I, we see the kinship between the I and the I of God.
There's this quote that I particularly like about the inner I. So His Majesty says, it is more the inward I than the possession of eyesight, which is necessary for the acquisition of education. As if what you're saying, right? That behind all scientific knowledge and teaching, one has to have that inward eye to have that inner overstanding. Of the spiritual truth and connection of everything.
His Majesty speaks about the inner eye, calling him the eye of mind. That is also the third eye. That is the first point that you touch when you make the sign of the cross of the Ethiopian tradition. The first point is the third eye. And of course, it is, the foundation of the will and the conscience of the body. And that is, the mind, that is the middle point of the identity of man, in the middle between flesh and spirit, where his own specific personality lies.
Thank you. Give thanks, brother. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. How the third eye is a gateway to spirituality and to,
Is a foundation also true, as the spiritual foundation within our body.